A man suddenly discovers an easy way to make money by pretending to be blind. Not only can he beg openly at temple doors, earning 3 times more than others. Even when crossing streets, kind people help him. He can even get free government housing based on his blind identity. But these are not the man's limits. He also uses his pianist identity to go to people's homes to play piano, because no one guards against a blind person. So he can often peek into many housewives' private affairs. But little does he know, pretending to be blind will become his biggest regret in life. This day, he goes as usual to celebrate a rich man's wife's birthday. However, after opening the door, the woman seems unwilling to let him in. She claims he might have remembered the wrong time, but Akash has already received the rich man's deposit. After the performance ends, there will be a considerable final payment. He certainly couldn't have remembered wrong. Just as they argue, the noise attracts the neighbor old lady's attention. The woman seems unwilling to attract the neighbor's attention, so she has to let him in. After confirming Akash is truly blind, the woman feels relieved and lets him play piano. However, he has barely started playing when he's shocked by what he sees, because in the living room in front of him, there lies a corpse. He finally understands why the woman was unwilling to let him in, but at this moment he cannot show nervousness. He can only first excuse himself to go to the bathroom. When passing through the living room, to make himself more like a blind person, he deliberately steps in the red wine on the floor. He thought reaching the bathroom would calm his mood, but unexpectedly, this is the most terrifying place, because the killer is hiding behind him with a gun right now. He's so scared he doesn't dare breathe, afraid of being discovered and silent. Fortunately, he had enough urine saved up and didn't arouse suspicion. When returning past the living room, he clearly sees it's the rich man himself lying on the ground. Although he's extremely panicked inside, he can only pretend to be calm and continue playing piano. Meanwhile, the woman pretends to contact the rich man, saying the rich man will arrive in 10 minutes. Then they openly dispose of the rich man's body in front of Akash. Soon the man puts the body in a suitcase, preparing to drag it out and destroy evidence. The rich man's wife Simi deliberately walks to the door, wanting to create the illusion of welcoming the rich man home. Then Simi takes out the rich man's recording, pretending to have a conversation with her husband, but after just a few sentences, she excuses that the rich man suddenly has business to attend to. The man puts on the rich man's clothes and drags the suitcase out of the house. After coming out of the rich man's house, Akash doesn't go home. Instead, he sits on the roadside hesitating whether to report to police, because the rich man is not only a famous local philanthropist, and every time he visits the bar where Akash performs, his tips are extremely generous. He never expected that the rich man who was chatting and laughing with him yesterday would be murdered by his own wife. Perhaps heaven is pointing him in the right direction. A sentence from the lottery lady nearby makes him determined. She said God always looks after the blind. After choosing lottery numbers, Akash decides to go to the police station to seek justice for the rich man. When he arrives at the police station, Akash tells the police he wants to report a murder. Who knew that just after saying this, he sees the man who was hiding in the bathroom, and looking at the police uniform on him, he's actually the police chief. Akash doesn't know what to do for a moment. His nervous heart jumps to his throat. Fortunately, he thinks quickly and explains that his cat at home was killed, but the police chief obviously doesn't believe this explanation. He just killed the rich man, and the only blind witness comes to report. This makes him very suspicious that the blind man in front of him is pretending. To verify his suspicion, the police chief decides to personally drive him home. However, when entering, the police chief discovers a newspaper on the table. Akash can only say it was used to handle the cat. The police chief obviously doesn't quite believe it. Then he repeatedly tests Akash in various ways. He even takes out a small knife and throws it at Akash's head. Fortunately, Akash overcomes his inner fear and doesn't reveal any flaws. Seeing this, the police chief thinks he's overthinking and leaves, but little does he know, he will pay a heavy price for his misjudgment later. Soon it's evening. Akash comes to the bar as usual to play piano, but Simi also comes here. Obviously, Simi heard something from the police chief. She indirectly inquires about everything regarding Akash. After confirming Akash is blind, she feels relieved. Akash is also secretly observing Simi. A woman who just killed her husband in the morning can come to the bar to drink like nothing happened in the evening. This makes him feel Simi's terror even more. Soon it's the next day. The rich man's body is discovered by the river. Simi tells the media in an interview that her husband went to negotiate business with 10 million cash yesterday. Unexpectedly today, he became a corpse. Police also suspect this is a murder and robbery. The police chief also uses his methods to frame a young man. Although the young man explains repeatedly, he can only be forced to bear the charges under the police chief's torture. Soon the police call family members to confirm. Since Akash was also the last person to see the rich man, police call him to give testimony. Listening to the police read the fabricated testimony, he can no longer sit still. However, this is only his fantasy. If he tells the truth, his fate would probably be the same as the rich man. Finally, he's forced to sign the testimony. He thought this matter would end here, but unexpectedly, things soon take a turn. At the rich man's funeral, Simi vividly describes what happened before the rich man's death, not knowing they missed someone during their crime. After the funeral, the neighbor old lady finds the police. Because she discovers Simi is lying, she remembers that before the rich man came home, a strong man arrived at his house earlier than the rich man. She took the elevator with the strong man. Later she saw the strong man enter the rich man's house. She was puzzled, so she paid special attention to the the rich man's house activity. She found that when the rich man came home, the strong man never came out. This is completely different from what Simi described. Although the old lady doesn't know the strong man, she believes if she sees him again, she would definitely recognize him. After hearing the old lady's word, the police turned to Simi. Simi can only explain that the old lady is too old and might have mistaken last week's pizza delivery guy for the strong man. But the next day, when the police chat with the police chief, they casually mention the old lady's word. The police chief panics instantly. The police chief's wife even suggests that the rich man is a famous philanthropist locally. If they can get the old lady to describe the strong man's appearance, they might solve this case. Then the police chief could get promoted and raised. To please the police chief, even suggests bringing the old lady to the station for questioning. But these words sound like death knells to the police chief. He can only explain that he will personally investigate the old lady. On the other side, after learning about this, Simi knocks on the old lady's door. But little does she know Akash, invited by the rich man's daughter, is coming to be a private tutor. When the elevator opens, he happens to see Simi pushing the old lady downstairs. Instantly, he's so scared his legs go weak and he almost falls. His reaction is all seen by Simi. Akash can only pretend to be calm and act like he saw nothing. He comes to the rich man's door and knocks. But the rich man's daughter has already been sent away by Simi. Naturally, no one opens the door. Just when the situation becomes awkward, someone finally discovers the old lady's body. Then police determine from the old lady's reading glasses left on the balcony that she accidentally fell while watering flowers. At this time, Akash is already like a startled bird, rushing home immediately. He doesn't know the old lady was silenced for providing new evidence. He thinks Simi has reached the point of madness, preparing to kill everyone related to this case. He feels unprecedented fear. Then he calls his girlfriend, claiming he has something important to tell her, asking her to come to his house. But unexpectedly, just after hanging up, there's a knock at the door. The visitor is actually Simi. He can't help but worry. Simi says she wants to hold a memorial service for the rich man and wants to invite Akash to perform. She also takes out pastries she just bought and gives them to him. To avoid suspicion, Akash can only eat them. Then when Akash prepares coffee for Simi, he turns around and sees Simi wearing a skull mask. Obviously, she wants to test his reaction. Fortunately, his psychological quality is strong enough and he doesn't show any abnormality. But she's still not reassured. While drinking coffee, she takes out an unknown potion from her bag and openly pours it into his cup. Akash doesn't dare drink but can't let her see through him. He can only reluctantly bring it to his lips. Fortunately, he thinks quickly and excuses himself to get some cookies. Before leaving, he deliberately knocks over the cup. But this confirms Simi's suspicion. After realizing he's been exposed, Akash quickly assures Simi he won't reveal their secret. Besides, everyone thinks he's blind, but Simi laughs after hearing this. She seems not panicked at all, even tells Akash the rich man's real cause of death. It turns out that day was Simi's birthday. The rich man wanted to surprise her by saying he would go on a business trip tomorrow, but Simi believed it. When the rich man suddenly came home the next day, he saw a shocking scene. The rich man was therefore killed by them. After hearing Simi's word, Akash suddenly feels dizzy. It turns out the pastries he ate earlier were tampered with. Simi was just waiting for the drug to take effect. Soon after, his girlfriend arrives. However, a little boy downstairs stops her. He claims his phone has Akash's secret. When the girlfriend looks, she finds it's evidence that Akash is not blind. It turns out the boy has long suspected Akash's blindness is fake, because once he saw Akash's sunglasses fall down the stairs, but he picked them up like a normal person. Since Akash came home, the boy tied his phone to a bamboo pole and secretly recorded Akash's video, planning to use this secret to make some money. Who knew after the girlfriend watched the video, she completely ignored the boy and rushed upstairs. But when she knocks, Simi opens the door disheveled. Seeing this scene, the girlfriend immediately has a bad feeling. She hurriedly comes to the bedroom. When she sees naked Akash on the bed, she instantly understands everything. Simi quickly apologizes to the girlfriend, saying Akash is very understanding and she was confused for a moment. The girlfriend laughs angrily and immediately reveals what she just saw downstairs. Akash is not blind at all. Both of them were played by him. He's just a scumbag pretending to be blind. Simi immediately shows a surprised expression. The girlfriend leaves sadly after speaking. The boy downstairs chases for money but gets slapped by the girlfriend. Soon it's evening. When Akash wakes up, he's horrified to find his vision is completely dark. He's immediately scared into a cold sweat. He rushes into the bathroom and plunges his head into a water bucket. However, after repeatedly washing his eyes, he still doesn't feel any light. He gropes his way to the living room where Simi has been waiting. Seeing Akash has become blind, she finally feels relieved. But Akash is extremely angry at this moment. He rushes over to fight Simi desperately, threatening her that if she doesn't cure his eyes, he will definitely expose their crime. But Simi is not panicked at all, because no one would believe a blind man's words. If he really reports, that would be seeking death. Then the woman leaves. She finds the boy downstairs and deletes the only evidence under the pretext of watching the video. Akash in the room hurriedly calls his girlfriend, wanting her help. But his girlfriend is angry and doesn't listen to his explanation, proposing a breakup. Akash's last hope is also shattered. The boy comes to Akash's house, wanting to secretly film him pretending to be blind again. Unexpectedly, he sees Akash with white eyes. He's immediately scared and runs away. After leaving, Simi finds the police chief and tells him what just happened at Akash's house. Learning that Simi didn't kill Akash, the police chief starts worrying, because as long as he's alive, he's always a threat. Then he rushes to Akash's house. At this time, Akash is preparing to take his wallet and flee. He's afraid they might suddenly kill him someday. But just as he stands up, the police chief appears behind him and strangles Akash's neck with a sheet. The police chief is physically strong. No matter how Akash struggles, it's useless. Fortunately, at the critical moment, he suddenly touches a weight nearby. So he smashes it hard on the police chief's head. Then he rushed out of the house and decisively jumped from the second floor. Then he gropes his way to the street based on memory, wanting to find help. But at this time, shops on the street have closed, and there are few people even on the main road. Finally, he accidentally hits a telephone pole and faints on the spot. The pursuing police search everywhere but never find Akash. When Akash wakes up again, he's in a hospital. It turns out the rickshaw driver and lottery lady saved him. When Akash hears there's a doctor here, he hurriedly shows his newly poisoned blind eyes, asking the doctor to treat him. But the doctor says the eye doctor will only return in the evening. He says he wants to give him a tetanus shot first. But strangely, not only is there nothing in the syringe, but they're also drawing his blood. Not only that, when Akash goes to the toilet, he hears train sounds outside. He wonders how there could be a hospital built near railroad track. Even walking in the hospital, he feels it seems empty around. Although he realizes something's wrong, he's focused on curing his eyes and doesn't think much about it. But little does he know, he just escaped from the tiger's mouth and now entered the wolf's den. When evening comes, the doctor gives 200,000 rupees to the lottery lady. It turns out they had already planned to remove Akash's 2 kidneys to sell. Anyway, he's blind, and when they throw his body on the railroad tracks and it's crushed by a train, no one will discover anything unusual. Soon the doctor finds Akash. The doctor excuses that he wants to do a body scan for him, then brings him to the operating table. Akash is completely unaware and follows the doctor's instructions to remove his shirt and lie on the operating table. However, just as the doctor is about to inject Akash with anesthetic, the doctor's phone keeps ringing. Finally, he has no choice but to answer, but accidentally reveals something. Hearing this, Akash immediately realizes something's wrong and gets up to ask why the doctor wants to operate on him. Seeing their plan exposed, the three stop pretending and work together to hold Akash down on the operating table. They reveal their plan to sell his 2 kidneys. Akash panics after hearing this. Akash struggled to say he could pay them more than selling kidney. He swore by the Shiva tattoo on the lottery lady's arm. However, the doctor thinks this is a lie Akash made up to survive. He draws surgical marks on his waist, but just as the doctor is about to operate, the lottery lady suddenly realizes something. Akash therefore escapes disaster. Not only that, when he wakes up, the three are more polite than before. The lottery lady curiously asks him how a blind person knows she has a Shiva tattoo on her hand. But Akash doesn't answer. Instead, he describes all 3 of their appearances in detail, even clearly describing each person's clothing style. The lottery lady is stunned, thinking Akash is a reincarnated deity with a 3rd eye. Seeing his words have effect, Akash tells them a way to earn 10 million. Thus a revenge plan is born. On the other side, the shrewd police chief finds Simi and tells her about Akash's escape. But he explains he has issued a wanted notice for Akash on murder charges. Simi also starts worrying after hearing this. Having escaped death, he will definitely try every way to expose their crimes. This might bring bad consequences for them. They must eliminate Akash as soon as possible. But unexpectedly, when Simi returns home, she hears piano playing inside. When she approaches, she finds Akash teaching her daughter piano. Simi didn't expect that after escaping death, Akash didn't flee but delivered himself to the door. She immediately shows killing intent. Then she excuses wanting to personally drive Akash home and takes him to the car. She turns around and calls the police chief. The two conspire to take Akash to the wilderness to kill him. But little does she know, everything is in Akash's plan. While Simi drives Akash to the wilderness, Akash, to avoid suspicion, says his eyes were innocently poisoned by them. This time he wants 1 million for medical expenses. If Simi doesn't give it, he will report their crimes. But Simi sneers inwardly and is more determined to kill Akash. However, just as she drives through a bridge tunnel, a rickshaw blocks their way. No matter how she honks, they refuse to move. Akash knows the time has come and immediately takes out a prepared towel to cover Simi's mouth and nose, knocking her unconscious. The lottery lady and others in the rickshaw also quickly get out to help. Then Akash calls the police chief's wife, claims to be a private detective investigating Simi for the rich man before his death. He found the relationship between Simi and the police chief, and the police chief killed the rich man for 10 million. Now that the rich man is dead, Akash can only find the wife. He threatens the wife that if she doesn't give him the 10 million, he will give all evidence to the media. Learning the truth, the wife completely loses control and fires several shots at the police chief hiding in the toilet. Thinking that she diets and exercises every day to maintain her figure for the police chief, but the police chief eats 16 eggs daily to serve that woman. This is simply unacceptable to her. Faced with his wife's death threat, the police chief can only admit his criminal process, but he says he will break off relations with Simi from now on and will only love his wife. But just as he finishes speaking, the phone rings. The wife thinks it's Simi calling and fires again. The police chief has no choice but to turn on speaker. Unexpectedly, the message from the other side is news of Simi's suicide by jumping into the river. It turns out police found Simi's car and belongings on the bridge, which is also where the rich man's body was found. Police suspect Simi couldn't accept her husband's death and chose to jump into the river here. And there are many crocodiles in the river, so the body may never be found. But little does anyone know, Simi is not dead but was taken to the hospital by the lottery lady. The doctor even draws a tube of Simi's blood, threatening that if it matches Akash's blood type, they will transplant her corneas to Akash. To save her life, Simi can only reveal her entire criminal process. This conversation is also recorded by them. Then several people use the recording as leverage to force Simi to reveal where the 10 million is. But Simi knows clearly there's no so-called 10 million. That was just to give the rich man's death a reasonable explanation. But they don't believe Simi's words. After all, a woman who killed her husband is not trustworthy. Then several people can only target the police chief. They decide to have the police chief deliver money to a building tomorrow morning. Akash introduces his flawless plan to them one by one. Everyone listens with great interest, but little do they know, behind their kind appearance, each harbors ulterior motive. The next next morning, the lottery lady tricks Akash to the warehouse. After he sits in the wheelchair, they tie him up. It turns out from the beginning they never planned to share money with him. They just planned to abandon him after using him. After they leave, Simi's laughter can be heard in the room. It turns out they locked the two together. Simi roughly guesses their purpose and proposes they should cooperate. Because even if they finally deceive the police chief, when they discover there's no so-called 10 million, neither of them will have a good ending. To show sincerity, Simi first unties Akash's ropes. However, after Akash frees himself, he doesn't plan to untie Simi. But since he can't see the surroundings, he can only first remove Simi's blindfold. However, Simi has other plans. Seeing scissors on the table nearby, she gives Akash random directions while shaking the table. Soon the scissors successfully fall into her hand. After she frees herself, Akash discovers Simi has gone quiet. Just as he turns to inquire, Simi knocks him down with a stick. At this critical moment, Simi hears the sound of a door opening outside and stops her action. The doctor who opens the door finds Akash lying on the ground. Just as he wonders what happened, Simi knocks him down with a stick. Before he can escape, he's chased by the pursuing Simi. In her fury, Simi even picks up a knife from the ground and stabs it at the doctor's body. Soon his chest has several wounds, scaring the doctor into screaming for help. Just then, Akash also crawls out and knocks Simi down at the doctor's critical moment. The doctor takes the opportunity to pick up medicine from the ground, pour it on a towel, and cover Simi's nose to knock her unconscious. The doctor who escaped death decides to help Akash cure his eyes to thank him for saving his life. Then the doctor puts the woman in the trunk. At this time, the lottery lady finally calls, but things don't seem to go smoothly on their end either. After the police chief arrives at the construction building according to the agreed location, he puts the money bag in the elevator according to the lottery lady's request. However, after the elevator closes, he climbs up the stairs with a gun. When the driver upstairs gets the money bag and is about to check it, the police chief chases up. Faced with the police chief's gun, the driver chooses to run. Seeing the driver won't stop no matter how much he's called, the police chief decisively pulls the trigger and hits the driver's neck. After the police chief learns the evidence is with the lottery lady on the first floor, he takes the elevator to return to the first floor. But little does he know, the driver has already informed the lottery lady by phone. Learning the money is obtained, the lottery lady randomly cuts off the entire building's power supply. In panic, he fires a shot at the elevator. Unexpectedly, the bullet bounces back and kills him. The lottery lady takes the dying driver to the hospital. However, after the doctor's rescue, the driver still dies from excessive blood loss. The lottery lady desperately opens the money bag and finds it's full of waste paper. In despair, she immediately calls the doctor. However, after learning this news, the doctor doesn't seem to care at all. He quickly lies that both Simi and Akash have escaped. Now he also wants to return to the countryside to hide for a while. After hanging up, the doctor drives away with Akash and excitedly says he discovered a huge business opportunity. It turns out when he accidentally drew Simi's blood last time, after testing, he found Simi's blood type is very rare. It exactly matches what his client needs. Now by selling Simi to them, he can get 60 million rupees. To thank Akash for saving his life, the doctor is even willing to take out 10 million for him to treat his eyes. Then the car disappears at the end of the road. However, the story doesn't end there. 2 years later, Akash's ex-girlfriend, while traveling in London, accidentally finds Akash's performance notice posted outside a bar. She curiously enters the bar and finds Akash wearing sunglasses playing piano. The girlfriend thinks Akash is pretending to be blind again to swindle. So after the performance, she finds him. Akash also tells his girlfriend what happened after he and the doctor left. At that time, the doctor took him to sell Simi. But Akash still felt this was too cruel and they should hand Simi over to the law. But the doctor was unwilling to see 60 million disappear. As long as they sell the woman, they can live a wealthy life from then on. Who knew just after he finished speaking, sounds came from the trunk. The doctor had to stop the car and prepare to inject Simi with another anesthetic. But unexpectedly, when the doctor opens the trunk, he falls down covering his neck. And when the car starts again, the driver has changed to Simi. But Akash beside her is completely unaware and is still pleading for Simi. Simi finally softens and kicks Akash out of the car. However, before he walks far, she regrets it and decides to turn around and run over a cart. But at this critical moment, a blind rabbit suddenly jumps out from the roadside and hits the car's windshield. This finally causes the car to overturn. Simi dies on the spot in the car explosion, and that blind rabbit escapes unharmed. Soon after, with a friend's help, Akash comes to London for development. After hearing Akash's experience, the girlfriend realizes she wronged him, but she also feels sorry for Akash. If the doctor had succeeded, Akash would have recovered his sight by now. After saying goodbye to his girlfriend, the biggest twist of the play finally appears. When Akash walks to a soda can, despite being blind, he accurately predicts the can's existence. And in Akash's story, how does he know it was a rabbit that hit the car, and moreover, a blind rabbit?